This is the episode of Amazing Coincidences.
I am so happy. That was magical.
Disappointing shrimp.
Oh, I don't like this.
And a personal quest in northern Denmark.
So we're in the harbor of Nykøbing Mors. And there's a special reason why I wanted to come here that I haven't told you about yet.
I'm Maya, and this is Aladino. In the summer of 2022, we sailed north in our 28-foot home with our sights set on Scandinavia. We dreamed of rugged coastlines, intense sailing, and otherworldly anchorages. Join us as we document every chapter of this Scandinavian summer. The island of Venne is located in the Limfjord Canal, which is less of a canal and more of a series of saltwater bays that cuts across northern Denmark from west to east. After crossing the North Sea and arriving to the fishing town of Tiburon, we were now making our way through the Limfjord Canal, and so far, we had made it as far as Venne. Turns out, as luck would have it, we had accidentally timed our visit just right. Venne is home to Denmark's tiniest church, and it just so happened that there was a free concert there that night. So of course, we had to go. The hall filled up quickly. I suppose it doesn't take much to fill Denmark's tiniest church, but it felt like the whole island had come. The performer was Mariann Mikkelsen, harp and voice. The songs were in Danish, so I couldn't understand the lyrics, but I didn't mind. It was the atmosphere which I found so amazing. Here we were, on this tiny island with 200 inhabitants that I had never heard of before yesterday, and just by chance, watching a harp concert in Denmark's tiniest church. The music soared around the small space, the candles flickered. Outside, the sky darkened and the wind danced with the boats in the harbor. This is the magic of traveling.
That was so heartwarming. First of all, the music was beautiful. And the people there were also so kind. The lady I sat next to began talking to me, and she was excited to learn I was from Canada, and I was excited to be able to talk to her. She lives here on the island and, of course, speaks perfect English, as it seems like all Danish people do. And she was telling me a little bit about the island, and then she pointed out a guy sitting in the crowd who apparently runs the local newspaper, and she went up and tapped on his shoulder and said something to him. And then after the concert, he came over and gave a short little interview and took our photo and took our names for the local newspaper, which is so funny because he found it so interesting that someone from Canada and some mixture of Swiss and Italian would end up sailing their boat to this very small island. You know, one thing I've been thinking about as we travel through these same areas that Lynn and Larry Party traveled through, and in case you don't know, Lynn and Larry are cruising legends who wrote a lot of books a few decades ago now. And their experiences traveling before the time of the internet and before the time of cell phones seems to me to be very different from how traveling is now. I think now, traveling is such a commonplace thing. I was wondering to myself, as I read of Lynn and Larry's happenings, coming into a yacht club that they've never been to before, being invited to parties here and there, meeting local people, I was wondering if that kind of experience is still possible to have in today's world. Here, it felt like a piece of that traveler's magic, where you can meet people who are genuinely excited to meet you and who tell you about the place they're from and introduce you to people, and that was really beautiful. Good morning! It's a very late morning for us today. It is gray, dreary, rainy, windy. But this morning we did get a knock on the boat around 8 o'clock from our boat neighbors down the way who know us from YouTube. And they brought us 2 beautiful fresh buns, apparently made somewhere on the island, though there's not really a bakery. I think they're just made by a lady. It's so nice. So, in another series of Venna being extremely kind to us, some fresh buns for breakfast.
They weren't kidding when they said that winter comes early here.
I don't think this is winter. I think that this is literally what they define as summer.
Because they only need 1 layer. In winter you need 4. Let's see.
With the weather being what it was, we were in no hurry to leave the island.
Decided to get an Airbnb for the day. No, actually something that I remember from my childhood when I traveled in Scandinavia with my parents. Most campgrounds, as far as I recall, they provide a room in case it's just windy or rainy.
Which I guess is often.
But that is so nice.
And there's internet, so my day has been spent right there making an episode for you all. And Aladino just came with snacks. What a wonderful, wonderful person. Thanks, Deanie, I love you.
You're welcome.
So another day passed, getting some work done in the harbor kitchen and watching as evening approached.
Good morning. I think we have to leave Venna now. We've been here for 3 nights, so it's time to move on if we want to see the rest of Scandinavia. And it is not ideal weather. It is kind of cold, rainy-ish, windy, gray, and it's going to be upwind all the way to our next destination. So, well, it's not ideal, but we must press onwards. It is rather inspiring, maybe that's the right word, to see all these Vikings out on their ships in this weather.
In shorts.
Full sails, in shorts, no reefs in. Anyway, we're not quite that tough.
No, the Italian got
the heater out.
Got the heater out. There's shore power. Oh, that was a tempting idea and I did it.
So we're gonna have our foulies on and probably a few reefs in the sails, but we're heading out.
I sure was hoping that this bag wouldn't come out until September, but they've warned us.
It is the middle of summer. Can't you tell? You know it's bad when you look at the forecast in the Netherlands and you think, wow, doesn't that look good?
It was blowing 20 knots, but with such well-protected waters, the sea state was still quite flat. With a few reefs, the sailing was fast and fun, even if the temperature wasn't totally ideal.
They said go south until the butter melts!
We're doing something wrong!
We're doing something wrong.
Well, it wasn't turquoise water and bathing suits, but we didn't go north to find the tropics. It was exhilarating to speed along the water, gray skies creating a dramatic atmosphere, imagining ourselves to be Vikings on the high seas. Well, the seas were flat, and we're a far cry from being as tough as a Viking. But we can imagine, can't we? And although we weren't on our way to plunder anything, I did have a personal quest of sorts which was waiting for us in our next harbor. I'll tell you more about that when we arrive.
Following a shadow down to the graveyard, gonna say a prayer, gonna pay my dues. I've been running wild ever since I left Virginia, trying to find a face that might remind me
Having fun?
Yes.
I know that the world is ever steady changing. Lord, give me wings so I could fly away, fly away, fly away, fly away, fly.
As this trimaran raced past us, the crew shouted out, "We love Canada!" Well, we love Denmark.
Like a pane of glass, to the wind it scatters, and let's go at last.
We were headed to the town of Nykøbing on the island of Mors. Mors is the biggest island in the Limfjord Canal, and although I've never been there, in a kind of strange way, if this island didn't exist, then neither would I. I'll explain in a moment.
Sang another song for the ones in sorrow. Sing about the smiles that they'll never see. Sing about a love who's over across the mountain. Tell her that I love her. Don't you tell about, tell about, tell about, tell about, tell about, tell about, tell about.
All right, we are arriving to Nykøbing Mors.
Yes, I can see it.
We're in the harbor of Nykøbing Mors. And there's a special reason why I wanted to come here that I haven't told you about yet. My parents actually visited this place before I was born on a wooden tall ship named the Søren Larsen. That is the ship that my parents sailed around the world on, and it's the ship where they met, because my dad is from Canada, and my mom is from New Zealand, so it seems unlikely that they would have met if it were not for being crew on this ship. And yeah, they really did sail all around the world on it, but one voyage they did was to take her up to this particular place in Denmark, because this is where the Søren Larsen was built in the 1940s by a local boatyard named Søren Larsen and Sons. In many ways, I think I would not exist if it were not for the Søren Larsen, and if it were not for the boatyard here in this town, which built the Søren Larsen. So that's kind of cool to think about. I have no idea if any boatyard of that name still exists here, but we're just going to go walk around and go see what Nykøbing Mors is all about.
And I would not exist if it weren't for the snack that we're just about to find. So,
Well done. I guess we'd better head to town.
Oh, Aladino, it's 6 p.m. on a Saturday in the middle of summer.
yeah.
I don't know what's going on here,
No.
but there is nobody here.
Yeah.
It did have an eerily empty feeling. When I had researched Nykøbing online, I read about it being a larger town and a tourist hotspot, but for 6 p.m. on a Saturday in late July, I wasn't really sure where everyone was. But we did find a pizza place that was open for Aladino to get his snack.
There isn't much in this town.
No.
The one fish and chips place was closed. but good that there is pizza in this world. Pizza is international. This is young fishermen's training here. It's literally, we've seen one in every city. How to get
seasick
trained
training.
Yeah. How to get seasick. It's funny.
I don't know. The kids made it look a lot easier, Dean. Are you seasick now?
We're back on the boat and we have some updates for you. And the wonderful thing about harbors here is they all have communal meeting places with kitchens. And this particular one had a barbecue, so we decided to do a barbecue dinner. And we didn't bring the camera because we wanted to see if we could just talk to some people at the yacht club. And sure enough, there was a gathering of people at the yacht club, all older people. We began talking to some of them, and a few of them did actually remember the Saren Larsen, and they remembered when it sailed back here with my parents, actually, which I guess was at the beginning of the 90s. They said it was built at a shipyard just over there, although that shipyard no longer exists. It is now a shellfish processing plant. But it was cool to meet some people who remembered that ship. When we were done the barbecue, some music actually started up inside. There was a guy playing the accordion and everyone singing along. They knew all the lyrics, which was a really lovely atmosphere. And then a surprise to us, at sundown, a guy came with a trumpet and played a tune over the whole harbor. And our Danish neighbors here told us that that's actually not uncommon in Danish harbors to play a trumpet tune at sundown to remind the boats to take their flags down. Everyone takes their flags down here in the night, which is the proper thing to do. So I'm sorry I didn't film more of this. A lot of this happened off camera, but I'm filling you in on the story, and I think this is one of the reasons why one day in the future I do really want to write a book about our travels, because I think there are some facets of a voyage which lend themselves better to the written word. Because in new interactions, when you're meeting new people, it feels very strange to suddenly hold a camera up in a stranger's face and say, can you repeat that for the camera, where thousands of people are going to watch it and you have no idea what type of videos I make and all of that. So I think those kind of interactions and how they unfold happen better on the written page. So one day I'll write a story about these voyages, and in it will be tales of all the people we've encountered and traditions we've encountered along the way. But for now, I think this episode is going to come to a close. Thank you guys so much for watching. Really, really appreciate it. It has been an absolute joy for us to be out here sailing, making travel films again. This is where I just come alive. I love doing this so much, and there's going to be a lot more of this in the future. Huge thank you to our patrons for making this all possible. We absolutely could not do this without you. If you would like to become a patron, you can do so for as little as $2 a month. It's a way to become a little bit more involved and to directly contribute to the making of these videos. It is really only because of that these videos are able to be produced every week, and we're so appreciative of that. In exchange, there's a lot of behind-the-scenes bonuses on Patreon. For example, real-time updates every week, and I actually do something called Maya's Journals, where I do write sort of travel articles about the people, places, things that we see in real time every Tuesday, sometimes Wednesday, on Patreon. So those are stories that never make it to YouTube. Those are just Patreon bonuses. There's also a lot more interaction that can happen on Patreon because it's a bit of a smaller audience. A huge thanks to the folks whose names are now appearing on screen for always going the extra mile to make sure that Magic Carpet keeps being produced. We will see you all next Friday.
Oh, and what about those disappointing shrimp I talked about in the intro? Well, that's not too much of a story. Aladino requested that I make this lovely dish that I've made before, but we could only find frozen shrimp, and turns out they weren't that good, and Aladino set up a hidden camera. I mean, I knew the camera was on the table, but I actually had no idea it was filming, to film my reaction being an absolute baby about how much I didn't like the shrimp, and it was absolutely hilarious for me to watch my own facial expressions. I had no idea I was this dramatic, but I guess I've got a lot to think about now. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, you guys. As always, we'll be back next week.